Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammāṃ Saṅghāṃ namasami. So we gather here this Saturday night to come and practice together, meditate and reflect on Dhamma. Not quite sure how things are going to come out tonight. My mind is a little bit distracted and scattered with a few things. Don't quite feel as centered as I like to feel when giving a reflection, but see how it goes. There was something that came to mind was just a little vignette from the teachings, or actually it was from the Vinaya. There was a monk whose name was Venerable Chula Pantaka, and every fortnight one of the senior monks from the community is invited by the nuns who are living nearby to give a fortnightly talk, a reflection, and it was his turn to do that. And basically, he had this reputation of going for these occasional awadas, is what's called, or talks, presentations to the nuns community, and he had this reputation for saying the same thing over and over and over again, for a four-stanza line, a quote from the Buddha that was, something worthwhile for sure, but apparently not extremely inspiring, especially when it was repeated over and over again. And he came and did the initial greetings and inquiries and things like that with the nuns community, and the nuns were quietly saying to them amongst each other, "Oh no, it's going to be another one of those same discourses, another one of those same talks where the Venerable just keeps repeating the same thing over and over again. This isn't going to be very worthwhile or very helpful." And he overheard them say that. And so what he did was, being a quite accomplished practitioner, just not a very good speaker, he used his psychic powers to levitate, rise up into the air, and walk back and forth in the air, and sit in the air, and lie down in the air, all the postures, while he was emitting flames and smoke. And reciting those same four lines over and over again. And of course he caught their attention, and everybody was saying, "Oh, what a wonderful talk, what a wonderful exposition." I don't think I can do that, but anyway, I don't know why that came to mind, but it came to mind. Sort of one of those kind of very dry humor stories that you find in the canon. So just reflecting on longevity in the practice, and what it takes to keep going. Because there's plenty of times in our lives when things aren't going so well, or somebody says or does something that causes a lot of confusion, difficulty for you, or just circumstances in life as they are can be quite challenging sometimes, and we kind of wonder, have I been practicing at all? You know, why am I responding this way? Why am I feeling this way? You know, sometimes can lead us into doubt and confusion, and then there's some times when things are going fine, but we just lose inspiration over a long period of time, go into a period of doldrums in the practice where there's nothing in particular that's coming up to cause any problems, but we've just reached some sort of plateau and wonder or a blockage, and things just don't seem to be moving. And sometimes it can be strong enough that people just kind of drift away and give up on the practice. So there's lots of challenges for us as we go through our days, trying to be you know, good Dhamma practitioners, but sometimes there are challenges, or just we lose the plot and drift. And I think at those times it's important to recognize that, and then to remind ourselves kind of what our initial inspiration was to get involved with practice, to review our life and what it was that caused us to turn towards Dhamma practice from the beginning. I think for many of us, it's kind of realizing that life doesn't provide everything that you expected it would, and we look for an answer to our questions, our queries about what is this all about, what am I doing? Sometimes it's in response to some very serious kinds of suffering. Perhaps we bottom out in our lives and get desperate enough to turn towards something completely different, like a spiritual path. Other times it's more subtle, this yearning for some sort of understanding of how this is all happening, why it's all happening, and seeking refuge, seeking an answer, seeking a path that will help us understand the source of this discontent. You know, and for some of us, and I think it was particularly true for myself, just that I had, you know, pretty good life, not too much that I could complain about in my life as I'm moving from young adulthood into my late 20s, early 30s. But just slowly realizing kind of the, what is it that I'm doing, you know? Just that kind of doing the same routines, following the same stimulations to enjoy life, you know, was in my earlier years, you know, kind of a bit of a sensualist, enjoying too many times with substances and hanging out and not really doing anything productive other than kind of polluting my mind. Alcohol and a bit of drugs and hanging out with people who weren't particularly inspiring. And then just, a couple of times really bottoming out with that kind of stuff. You go to somebody's house to have a bit of a party, or end up doing a little bit too much alcohol, a little bit too many puffs on the marijuana, and a little bit too much food. And remember one time doing that and just ending up in the bathroom, kind of losing it all, and not mentally, everything just coming up, not psychologically, but coming up literally from my stomach, and kind of wondering, this is supposed to be fun, I'm supposed to be having a good time here. What's this all about? So, we all have these kinds of experiences that we can look back on, and, after you do enough of those and kind of sober up a bit and kind of rein in some of those extreme tendencies, but still that kind of, good enough? Is it good enough? Nothing outstandingly bad happening, but why am I not happy? Why am I not content? What's missing? So, there's this turning towards, I hadn't really, those thoughts came up, I hadn't really pursued a strong spiritual course, but it helped provide that kind of sense of motivation to look towards something that was a bit more sustaining and fulfilling. So the story for each of us is different, but going back and looking back, each of us needs to do that from time to time to kind of break us out of our confusion, or our kind of being temporarily lost, losing the plot, getting away from the path of practice, at least in a serious way, and just kind of treading water. To go back and see what it is, what do we really want to do with our lives? How do we really want to spend our lives? As we get older, we realize that life is really quite short. And where do we want to be when this is all coming to a close? So reinvigorating ourselves with a bit of inspiration, reflection, self-reflection, and asking ourselves, where am I going? Can I re-inspire, redirect, put new energy into practice? And at some point, if we're sincere practitioners, we need to make that commitment to let this practice, let this teaching, let this trajectory be the central, let this be our life. Whether we're in the monastic paradigm or whether we're in lay life, we have the opportunity to really reflect and look and see, are we making the best use of our time? Do we really want to make an end to this kind of suffering? How much longer do we want to suffer in samsara? How many more lifetimes do we want to keep doing the same old, same old? So we find inspiration. We look at examples of teachers, of people who have tread the path and who have gone through many of these kinds of difficult periods, but have always reinvigorated and have just made that commitment for this lifetime. Just for this lifetime, I will keep going in whatever form I can, in whatever way I can. It's a short life. Why not commit myself to this? What do I have to lose? So the process isn't easy, if we make that kind of commitment and refresh that kind of commitment. there's a lot of things that change, a lot of things that we have to let go of in order to make space for this practice in our lives. Inevitably, we were talking about this at tea time a few nights ago, inevitably it will change the circle of people that you keep in your life. Sometimes dramatically, sometimes gradually, where the people that you've been associating with, even family, friends who have been close, just maybe that could be that they're not, discouraging you or saying what you're doing is stupid, but they're just not interested, they're not involved, they're not part of the plot, they're kind of just continuing on with doing whatever it is that they're doing. And the fact that you're changing and moving deeper along a committed path of spiritual development is kind of confusing to them or bewildering or just inconsequential. And that's the tough part of this kind of practice is not feeling bereft with the change that occurs in the world of our social relationships when we make this kind of commitment. And to realize that that's part of change, that people do change and grow apart if they're not moving along the same trajectory. So that's one of those hard truths that sometimes is an impediment for us if we feel particularly close or committed to these relationships. It can be a real challenge. But one just needs to keep on asking ourselves the question, how do I want to spend the rest of my life? When I look back, will I feel like I have made the right decisions? Will there be any regrets? And then, based on that sober looking back, or that sober projection of what it would be like if we, when we're there and looking back, to adjust and recommit, and just be willing to take that risk. It's a lot of letting go. Letting go is relinquishment, letting go, release. These are hallmarks of this path. Because we can't open up to new ways of understanding without letting go of old ways. So there always has to be this willingness to release, relinquish, let go, and I think that's the primary attitude that we all need to cultivate to continue along this release. We're not trying to get something, we're not trying to be something, we're not trying to create a new personal paradigm that we can attach to and hold to. We're working on letting go, relinquishing the old obstructions in a kind of a gentle but relentless way. We have to do it very gently because we don't want to tear out any moorings that we have to rely on for stability, but gradually work on whittling away all the obstructions to peace and clarity. Not easy. But in the path that the Buddha gives us, it's apparent that this kind of relinquishment, letting go, release is really the primary modus operandi, the kind of way we direct our mind throughout the whole process, whether it's, throughout the whole process of sila, samadhi, panya, really, that the sila, the taking up of precepts, how we act in the world, it's all really one form of letting go. We're letting go of causing harm. We're seeing where we do cause harm, and we're relinquishing those kinds of actions. We're refraining from taking the life of any living creature. We're relinquishing that kind of need to have to obliterate life, even if it's the smallest forms of life that have feeling, that have sentience. So, obviously we relinquish, the very gross forms of say, taking human life, but also the lives of other small creatures that in the past maybe we've been not aware of the suffering that's caused by even, killing the mosquito, the bugs in our garden. We learn new ways to kind of let go of the need to have a perfect environment around by obliterating other creatures. And we just stop doing that. We relinquish, let go of taking anything that's not ours. We realize that even on a small scale, taking things causes harm, difficulty, or taking advantage of somebody in a sensual way, sexual way. We relinquish doing that. We stop doing that. Again, we're not trying to become perfect Pollyanna, super sweet kind of people through, trying to be kind of, the perfect person, but we're refraining from we're relinquishing the harmfulness. We refrain from harsh speech and false speech because that's harmful to other people. We often do these kinds of things to get something, or to protect ourselves in some way, or to make ourselves look better, or to get to have a good reputation. We tend to act on those motivations, and sometimes there are ways that are harmful. So letting go of the need to do that, relinquishing harmful ways of acting and speaking in the world. Letting go of the obstructions to clarity, the practice of samadhi, the practice of pulling together a collected mind, a composed mind, a settled, peaceful, clear state of knowing. That development of samadhi is all about letting go. That's what we're doing when we're examining the hindrances that are obstructing us. The tendency towards wanting to have sensual experience and the mind that's caught up in craving and wanting, looking for that temporary release that comes from sensual enjoyment, sensual pleasure. I mean, it's interesting because really the basic core motivation is to get rid of that feeling of wanting something, desire, that craving is unpleasant. And the only way we know how to get rid of that kind of thirst or hunger for some sort of stimulation, the only way we know is to search for and get it. And then the temporary release that comes from not wanting anymore, we got it. So we don't feel that craving, that urge. And the ending of that craving is there's a temporary sense of relief. The problem is, of course, as we all know, that it's temporary. It doesn't take care of the core problem of craving. It will arise somewhere else, sometimes sooner than we expect. So letting go of that urge always follow the sensual gratification and see if we can find something that's more long-term sustainable to give us that sense of peacefulness. The same with anger, ill will. We act on that for a temporary sense of release of energy, feel better for a few seconds, maybe, if even that, and then live with the results of that, both in the harm, the difficulty, the pain we cause other people, and also the memories that we have of that and how we have to live with that, with those regrets. So it's another form of relinquishing, letting go, realizing that we actually, it's not easy, but we don't actually have to respond to those urges. We can restrain in the beginning and then allow them to arise as an energetic pattern and pass away on their own without compounding them. Letting go of the need to act. All the other hindrances, letting go of caving into dullness and just sleeping through our lives, either literally with sleep or with obliterating ourselves through drugs or some sort of way of blotting out reality. Letting go of that forward momentum of agitation and realizing that we don't have to respond to the world out of our anxieties and our fears and our worries and our concerns, that there's techniques and ways to damp that down and to not compound those energies again. So letting go of those and letting go of our tendency to constantly question and be confused, generate doubt about our lives and our practice through reflection and consideration and sticking with the practice enough to be able to feel some sense of confidence that what the Buddha actually taught us is something that's quite profound and quite useful, and that little by little we do realize the benefits of that and gradually dispel that sense of is this the right path? So it's letting go of hindrances in our trying to develop samadhi and release this constant confusion and momentum and come to a place of stillness. This is all through letting go, relinquishment. And the development of discernment, wisdom, panya. The ultimate forms of letting go, particularly that sense of that relentless need to try and find stability in the world, which is inherently unstable. Letting go of that sense of absolute need for control, ownership, sense of self, the scrambling to maintain our ground as a unique human being who has who has these abilities to control our life and our experience. We use what we do have control over to direct our mind in skillful directions. But then we also realize that there are many things that we don't have ultimate control over. Our bodies, our lives. Eventually this particular form will come to an end, comes to a close. And we have to come to terms with that through that relinquishment of that sense of identity, of that sense of me, of mine, myself. So letting go is the basic, you can't say it's a motion of mind, it's actually the disconnecting from engaging in the motions of the mind, whether the motions to try and get something or to try and get away from something, or just the general wandering motion from confusion, going from this to that. It's that stilling, that calming, that relinquishing of that motion, and the backing away from it, the release, the relinquishment, the letting go. This is the energetic pattern that we constantly have to return to. Something comes up, the mind catches one of our tendencies towards wanting or wanting to get away from, grabs onto an idea or a thought or some sort of sensory impingement, propels us for a while, and then we realize that we're caught again. And then the motion needs to be recognition and relinquishment, letting go, letting it pass, stepping back, and watching for that moment of cessation, that moment of stillness that comes when we do that, when we are able to let go and relinquishment. There's a period of stopping. And it's these periods of stopping where we have the opportunity to open up to a different reality. So lots of the teachings that the Buddha gives to us are around this letting go, relinquishment, abandoning. The words that we hear and chant, Chago, Patinisago, Mutti, and Alayo, all pointing in that direction. Giving up, giving over, relinquishment, freedom, non-grasping, non-attachment, abandonment, abandonment of the defilements of the mind. These are all the motions that the Buddha talks about as a path to peace. He says, bhikkhus, he's talking to the monks, he says, bhikkhus, abandon that which is not yours. What is it? What is it that isn't yours? Form isn't yours. Abandon it, this body. This body isn't yours. Abandon it. Let it go. Don't try and control. Feeling is not yours. Abandon it. Perceptions are not yours. Abandon them. Thoughts, feelings, emotions, mental formations, they're not yours. Abandon them. Even sensory consciousness is not yours. Abandon it. It might sound a bit bleak, but what it does do is give one the opportunity to open to that which is not part of the conditioned. It does open a door to that purity of knowing things as they arise, as they persist, and as they pass away. But there's this stable refuge of this quality of pure knowing that isn't part and parcel of the realm of arising, persisting, and passing away. It's separate from that. And it's very stable, it's very pure, it's very peaceful. So it takes this kind of, relentless commitment to developing all along the way, from our actions of speech and body and our contemplative practice, and watching for those moments where we are able to relinquish and let go and the mind moves to stillness, and then watching when that motion picks up again, as it will until all of the obstructions in mind are completely removed in the final part of the path. I always love to reflect on Ajahn Sumedho's very good line, very memorable line of when you're watching your mind and when you're involved, reflect. If it moves, don't trust it. Whatever it is, if it moves, don't believe in it. It's not a place of refuge, ultimate refuge. There might be some good movements moving in the right direction, but even that ultimately is part of this wandering on. But that pure knowing, that pure stillness that comes from complete relinquishment, that can be trusted. So just to keep on going back, remembering our motivations, remembering the potentials of the practice, not looking for the smoke in the mirror, the smoke and the flames and all the things that cause us to be stimulated, but just to that constant recognition that we have the potential to keep letting go, to keep realizing the truth. And we have our teachers and the teachings of the Buddha to keep pointing us in that direction, to keep us on the path when things come our way that aren't easy to bear, just to keep refreshing those memories of where do we want to put our attention, where do we want to spend our energy, what really matters in this life. Not to get distracted with temporary forms of happiness, but to just keep on watching the mind, doing wholesome activities, increase wholesome states, decrease unwholesome states, and letting go in every moment. So I'll offer that for reflection tonight.